The icy wind howled as Margaret shielded her daughter under a mound of cold ashes, desperate to hide her from a world that had turned its back on them. As lightning split the dark sky, an enigmatic farmer, Ellen, emerged from the shadows, his eyes locking onto their plight. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen everything. But first, let's go back to the beginning. The sun dipped low over the undulating plains, casting a golden hue across the rolling hills. The light danced on the horizon like the flicker of a distant flame as Margaret stood on her porch, a solitary figure etched against the grandeur of the American heartland. The house, though modest, bore the marks of the family who had tended it for generations, each nail and beam infused with its own tale of toil and triumph. Now, its once boisterous rooms stood silent, enveloped by an air of somber dignity that mirrored Margaret's own silent determination. Margaret had known the caress of the land's unpredictable bounty and the sting of its fickleness. Her husband, a man of quiet strength and unwavering resolve, had poured his soul into coaxing life from this stubborn soil, a partnership of blood, sweat, and love now suspended in time by his sudden passing. Yet in the face of such loss, it was not despair that tethered Margaret to this place, but hope. A tenacious hope that defied the shadows of adversity now looming over her and Emma. From her apron, Margaret withdrew a well-worn letter, its edges softened by frequent handling. The script, penned by a steady hand, spoke of dreams not yet realized but fiercely pursued. She clutched the letter, her grip a testament to the promises it contained. Promises of peace and renewal, whispered to her by a man whose kindness had offered her glimpses of a future replete with possibility. Though her benefactor's life had withered like autumn leaves, the seeds of his vision were entrusted to Margaret, and she intended to nurture them. Emma, at play nearby in the field, was blissfully unaware of the full weight her mother bore. Margaret watched her daughter's silhouette flit among the wildflowers, her laughter a beautiful symphony rippling through the summer air. Margaret's heart swelled with the fierce love only a mother knows, a love that demanded sacrifice and spawned resilience in equal measure. Every letter she wrote was a piece of that love, a crafting of words into a tapestry of hope that she sent out into the world, seeking a haven for Emma's future. As twilight settled, Margaret returned inside, her spirit fortified by resolve. The house, though devoid of her husband's presence, still thrummed with memories, each corner a silent witness to laughter and tears. She lit a fire that crackled with determination, stoking it as if by doing so she could kindle the hopes harbored within her breast. The flame's warmth embraced the modest room, dispelling the evening's chill, casting comforting shadows that danced across the walls like echoes of a legacy that had not yet reached its final word. Margaret sat by the hearth with Emma, enfolding her in an embrace that spoke 1,000 unvoiced promises. The past, with all its heartache, was a path to be trodden, the present, a challenge to be met. But it was the future that provided Margaret with solace, a canvas yet unpainted, waiting for the strokes of a new life she dared to believe in. Together, they watched the firelight play upon their modest world, and within its glow, Margaret saw not the end, but the whisper of a beginning. The wind howled through the narrow alleys of the tiny town, its icy fingers wrapping around every corner, as if conspiring with the townsfolk who watched from behind lace-curtained windows. Each snowflake that fell seemed to carry with it a whisper, a rumor, a cutting remark about Margaret and her daughter, Emma. To the townspeople, Margaret was an outsider, a widow without the support or approval of a husband to validate her presence. Her very existence became a testament to what the townsfolk perceived as failure, a reminder that even in their small, orderly world, uncertainty and ruin could seep in through the cracks of convention. Margaret moved through these cold streets with a grace that belied the turmoil within. The frigid air cut through her shawl, a constant companion in her journey through days dense with unspoken judgment. The market square, a hub of bustling life, turned hostile as she entered, each conversation suspended in midair as her presence demanded an acknowledgement that was begrudgingly given. Women would turn to whisper behind gloved hands, their eyes flitting over Margaret's figure like hawks circling prey, searching for any signs of weakness. Men paused, if only briefly, their pity masked as politeness, barely concealing their relief that societal misfortune had touched not their own homes, but another's. Among them, Margaret stood alone, her chin held high despite the weight of their disdain pressing upon her. Her isolation was a palpable entity, as tangible as the biting wind that swept the street clean of empathy. Yet within her heart, there was a ferocious resolve burning unacknowledged, like embers buried beneath the ashes of a hearth long gone cold. Her love for Emma, fierce and protective, was her shield against the tempest, her sanctuary from the storm of rejection that lashed at her resolve. Shielding her daughter from the world's cruelty became a daily act of defiance, a silent rebellion against the judgments passed upon them. Her family, too, once her bloodline and support, now distanced themselves, not out of malice, but overshadowed by a fear of association. In the intimate fronts of family gatherings, what was once warm had turned sterile, the ghost of hospitality lingering like a seasonal guest overstayed. Margaret sensed their discomfort, their inability to reconcile the woman they had known with the one she had become. To them, Margaret was a reminder of life's unpredictable nature, a widow, a mother cloaked in the loneliness of her new title, and an unresolved chapter they preferred to keep at arm's length. Through the months, winter's breath marked every step Margaret took, crystallizing the isolation into brittle yet beautiful patterns of endurance. The quiet dignity she wore served as her armor, transforming whispers of failure into unyielding strength. And while the town might not have acknowledged her resilience, within the cocoon of their tiny rented room, Margaret knew a haven where judgment was replaced by love, and every brush of Emma's sleepy hand against her cheek became an affirmation of the life she was building in defiance of all that had been lost. The wind howled like a pack of wolves, clawing at the decrepit walls of the small cabin where Margaret sat, anxiously folding her frayed shawl around young Emma's tiny frame. Outside, the storm raged with a viciousness that seemed almost sentient, throwing torrents of rain against the window panes in a relentless rhythm. The night sky, illuminated sporadically by violent streaks of lightning, revealed the desolation of the landscape, a bleak reminder of the isolation Margaret and her daughter endured. Margaret's heart pounded in her chest as she moved with purpose, her hands calloused by work and worry, carefully arranging the pile of ashes in the old brick fireplace. It was a desperate plan. The ashes, remnants of warmth from fires long since extinguished, were all she had to shield her daughter from the biting cold. As her fingers worked the soot into a semi-shelter, her mind raced with thoughts of escape. They had to leave, to forge a life somewhere beyond the judgmental eyes and harsh whispers of the town that had turned its back on them. Emma, wide-eyed and trusting, watched her mother with an innocence that underscored Margaret's resolve. Every glance from her daughter was like a raw plea for safety, a silent testament to the stakes of their perilous situation. Margaret paused, locking eyes with Emma. Her expression softened as she tucked a loose strand of hair behind Emma's ear. "We'll be all right, my love," she whispered, trying to imbue her voice with a conviction she struggled to feel. Just as Margaret painstakingly completed her task, a figure appeared against the backdrop of the storm, a shadow manifesting from the night itself. Ellen, the enigmatic farmer known to the townsfolk more by myth than acquaintance, approached with cautious steps. He was drawn by an inner pull, a farmer's intuition that something on this stormy night was not right. His gaze settled on Margaret and Emma, their predicament evident in the meager shelter she had crafted. Ellen's presence in the doorway, massive yet gentle, was like a balm on a wound, unexpected but sorely needed. He spoke little, but there was a warmth in his eyes that mirrored the denied compassion Margaret had yearned for. Intrigued by the quiet strength radiating from Margaret, a woman facing insurmountable odds with dignity, Ellen sensed a kinship, a shared narrative of endurance. In the modest comfort of Ellen's humble abode, the warmth of freshly baked bread mingled with the scent of wood smoke, enveloping the air and their weary souls. As the storm continued its wrath outside, Ellen, moved by Margaret's resilience, began to share his own stories, tales of loss and renewal, of an affinity with the land that had healed him over time. Each word exchanged between them wove an invisible thread, binding their spirits through shared hardship. It was in these exchanges, in the knowing nods and shared silences, that Margaret and Ellen formed a bond as sturdy as the land on which it was forged, a foundation upon which something enduring could be built, sheltering them from the storms of disdain and solitude. As the chill of winter melted away, giving way to the gentle warmth of spring, the town of Willow Creek transformed alongside the burgeoning landscape. Flowers began to cloak the once barren fields with vibrant colors, echoing the newfound acceptance Margaret found within the community. She was no longer just a widow with a child, struggling to find her place in a cold world. Margaret had become a beacon of resilience and embodying a quiet strength that radiated hope for others. Her journey had not been one of loud proclamations or grand gestures, but small, unwavering steps that redefined what it meant to belong. In those early spring days, whispers of Margaret's story spread through the town like a gentle breeze lifting the spirits of those who had been quick to judge. They spoke of her grace under pressure, her refusal to let life's circumstances dictate her worth, and her unwavering dedication to Emma's well-being. The townspeople began to see her not through the lens of her past, but through the lens of the courage she so starkly displayed, transforming their perception from skepticism to respect. Ellen, the farmer who had come into her life unexpectedly, stood by Margaret's side through it all. His own path had been marred by sorrow and solitude, making his eventual ability to open his heart once more to love both poignant and powerful. Their connection was a tapestry of shared burdens and dreams, each stitch strengthening the bond between them. With Emma as a living reminder of innocence and joy, Ellen too found a second chance, one he never anticipated embracing after years of seclusion. On the day of their wedding, the air was thick with anticipation and joy. The entire town gathered beneath the grand blooming trees that surrounded the modest clearing Margaret and Ellen had chosen as the site of their nuptials. The ceremony was simple, yet profoundly moving, marked by the heartfelt words exchanged between the couple. Here stood a woman who had faced adversity with steadfast resolve, and a man who found redemption in the most unexpected of places. As Margaret walked down the makeshift aisle, hand in hand with Emma, the townsfolk could not help but admire the beauty of the scene. Her dress, though plain, bore the marks of her perseverance. The subtle repairs, the carefully sewn patches representing her journey. Each step she took was a testament to her resilience, and in the eyes of those gathered, she was more than deserving of this hard-won happiness. By Ellen's side, under the tapestry of blossoming branches that swayed gently in the spring breeze, Margaret spoke her final vow, words imbued with the wisdom of her trials and the warmth of her triumphs. "Through your eyes, I remembered who I truly am." And with that, the town, once indifferent and cold, erupted into cheers, not just to mark the union of two souls, but to celebrate the redeeming power of love and acceptance born out of courage and integrity. Margaret's journey was a story of quiet endurance that touched the hearts of all who bore witness. In coming together, the people of Willow Creek, too, found renewal, recognizing the vital strength of community and the value of embracing the strength found in imperfection.